Assessment systems that focus too much on descriptors are not precise enough to provide reliable information to pupils about what they need to do next. Exam-based assessment systems also struggle to identify what pupils need to do next to improve. We need a way of integrating formative and summative assessments so pupils can see both the end goal and the steps that get you there. Unfortunately, many previous attempts at doing this have ended up overusing grades and levels. They end up giving pupils summative assessment tasks in most lessons and attempting to grade in subgrades or sublevels. This isn't really an integrated formative and summative assessment model, it's just overusing summative assessment. A more effective integrated model of assessment would measure formative progress using a different scale to the summative assessments. There would be a link between the formative and summative, but they'd be measured in different ways. For example, there are lots of really valuable classroom activities and assessments which are not capable of being graded. I can remember teaching an introductory lesson to Great Expectations, where one of the key things I wanted pupils to learn was the meaning of the word convict and a few other things about the way convicts were treated in Victorian England. This is really important for understanding the start of Great Expectations, because the character of the convict Magwitch is introduced at the start, but he is not named until much later. Pupils have to understand what the word convict means and how convicts were treated in Victorian England. But it's not possible to grade pupils from an A star to an F or from a level 1 to a level 8 on their understanding of the word convict. It is possible, and it is much simpler, to give them a couple of questions about the meaning of the word convict. Similarly, we know that when it comes to times tables, many pupils have difficulties with questions like 9 times 7 or 7 times 8. It is really useful for the pupil and teacher to know which particular calculations a pupil is weak at. But it isn't possible to grade or level a pupil on the calculation 9 times 7. Again, valuable information is not always capable of being recorded as a grade. If the result of such an assessment does need to be recorded, then it can be recorded as a raw mark, not as a grade. You can also see how this kind of simple assessment isn't just a measure of learning, but an aid to learning. If you ask the same question again 2 lessons later, the act of recalling it from memory would actually help to reinforce the memory. We need to be much more flexible in the types of assessment we use and to realise that they can't all be measured with the same scale. A system such as this would offer teachers much more flexibility. Assessments that give a grade have to be really restricted and limited in the way they are created. Once you remove the need for a grade, you can be much more flexible. In order to achieve such a system, teachers and schools need to resist the pressure to overgrade. It can be hard, particularly for schools in tough circumstances facing Ofsted inspections. But grading more than 2 or 3 times a year is counterproductive. It doesn't really allow you to measure the progress pupils make in individual lessons. And, even worse, it encourages shortcuts and teaching to the test, rather than deeper learning. The abolition of national curriculum levels has made it possible for schools and academy networks like ARC to develop new approaches to assessment which reflect this research. I'm confident that over the next few years, we will see more and more schools creating assessment systems which fulfil the potential of formative assessment.
Archive